We are going to talk about tax time in every single video because I know you get that tax check back. I know, I can tell. And guess what? You could do something responsible like pay off debt, pay your rent, pay your bills, but none of those are going to look as sick as a set of Workmeisters. So check this out. Go on our website right now. It's linked down below. Put in your vehicle. You click the three little buttons, put your vehicle in there and see all the wheels to fit your car. And we got some great deals for tax time right now. Plus, we will take your wheels. We'll put some tires on them and we'll ship them to your door so you don't have to go to the tire shop. Anyway, let's get into the video. You have scrolled through Instagram or TikTok. You've seen those cars so low, they look like they are magnetically stuck to the pavement. You're the ones with the insane negative camber, the tires tucked so deep the fenders nearly kiss the tread. Well, guess what? That's stance. Probably knew that. And it's a scene that's polarizing at best. Some folks love the look, saying it's a form of art and self-expression, while others roll their eyes, calling it impractical or dangerous or just downright goofy. Should yes, you, join in the fun? Is it worth the trouble and the cost to slam your ride, max out your fitment for that sweet, super low stance? People on both sides have strong opinions, but it really comes down to your priorities, your driving habits, and your tolerance for headaches. If you're on the fence, I'm gonna give you the scoop, the good, the bad, the ugly, the questionable. By the end of this, you are either going to be measuring your wheel gap with a credit card, or you are going to be thanking the car gods that you can clear a speed bump. So let's see if stance is for you. But what the heck is stance? Well, it means different things to different people. Every car has a stance, right? Stance culture is about lowering your car. Sometimes, a lot of the time, way lower than stock while dialing in your wheel fitment, meaning your width, your offset, your camber, etc., to get a very specific aesthetic. This involves negative camber, where the top of the tire angles inward, stretch tires, and minimizing wheel gap. You can set your coilovers to the lowest setting. You can install air suspension. You can stack washers on a strut. These are all viable options, but if you do washers, just stop. In typical usage, stance cars focus on form over function. This means look trumps performance. This can include tire stretch, running a narrower tire on a wider wheel for a stretch sidewall look. You can have poke, you can have tuck, you can have fender to lip, but poke means the wheels sit outside the fenders, tuck means they sit deep inside. Camber is the angle of the wheels in relation to the road. Negative camber can help with cornering in motorsport, but no, your Slam 350Z is not an F1 car, especially with negative 12 degrees. This subculture started catching mainstream attention in the early 2010s, piggybacking off of the popularity of big car shows like Weekfest, Stance Nation, Hella Flush, etc. It gave people a reason to show off their creativity, how they build their car, and their wheel and fitment combos. Some treat stance as an art form, meticulously planning wheel specs, fender rolling, suspension, whatever, to achieve that jaw-dropping, low and slow style. Stance also came about as a part of the growth of the Instagram age. Early 2010s was the start of Instagram. Yes, it's been that long. And guess what? Around that time, people started posting pictures of their car online. So there were people posting pictures of their cool looking car, and then blogs like Hella Flush and Cannabeat and Stance Nation, obviously the big one. They started picking up on this and they were like, hey, you got a cool car. Let's get this photographer. Let's take some pictures of it. Then those cars kind of blew up on Tumblr and Instagram, and people were like, yo, this looks sick. Let me do this to my car. They're honestly kind of the genesis of stance in the US. So why do it? Well, the main reason people stance their cars is outright performance. No. Nope. It's the look. It's obviously the look, right? It's super eye-catching. Park your slammed ride at a car meet, it'll turn heads even if people don't like it. If you're the kind of person who sees their car as an extension of personal style, like sneakers or a tattoo or something, then stance is an incredible canvas for this. The combination of dialing in your perfect fitment and stretching your tires to achieve that, and then dialing in your ride height, it's visually dramatic. There's no way around it. Community and clout. It's not just a car mod, obviously. Stance is a whole culture around it. Go to a stance-oriented event and you'll find people who share your passion for fitment. There's a lot of camaraderie, there's a lot of competition, and there's obviously a social media aspect too. Posting your new setup is going to rack up likes and shares and that sweet, sweet internet clout. If that's your thing, stance cars are a great way to do that. They typically engage better on social media than a race car. Can you tell? I'm not a stance guy. So stancing is not merely lowering it. It's going to also involve kind of an overall show car build at this point in time. The stance is like the ride height thing, but generally stance cars are show cars these days. So what you're doing at that point is you are building out an actual full-on show car. You're doing, interior, wheel fitment, blah, blah, blah. I think personally, at least, the days of like bags, wheels done are kind of over. And at this point, there's kind of an expectation that you're doing aero, you're doing interior, you're doing some power mods even. Now, some stance builds are obviously done purely for likes, but they do force owners to learn about suspension geometry, alignment specs, wheel specs, etc., etc. Even though you're kind of aiming for angles that are outside of what the norm is for performance, you have to understand how it all fits together. And so stance really is a crash course in wheels, tires, and suspension interaction, although with a styling priority in mind. You're generally not adjusting your caster for maximum performance, but if you have like too much caster in the rear of a Mark IV Volkswagen, guess what? You need IDF drop plates. And so you learn about caster by doing that. So why shouldn't you stance your car? Well, your drivability takes a big hit, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it here. When you slam your car, you are going to scrape on anything taller than a potato chip. You might need to approach inclines at bizarre angles or avoid certain roads altogether. Overly negative camber can reduce the contact patch of your tires, meaning that traction will suffer, especially in wet or snowy conditions. If you're driving your stance car in the snow, I have questions. Accelerated tire wear and suspension stress, running extreme negative camber or super big wheels or stretched tires can obviously lead to accelerated wear on your tires. You will often see inside tire wear because the contact patch is angled. If you daily drive a stance car, be ready to replace components more often. Ball joints, bushings, tie rods, wheel bearings might face extra stress from angles designed that they were not designed to handle. This translates to higher maintenance costs and more frequent repairs. You also have potential safety concerns, although I think this is largely unfounded, but not legal advice. In moderation, a little negative camber can improve cornering, but when you're running -15, stance setups do compromise handling, braking, overall stability, and general performance. The last thing you want is a blowout or a sudden loss of grip because your tire is wearing unevenly. It goes without saying, but if you track your car, you probably should not stance your car. I don't know if that was a concern to anyone, but there you go. There are legal issues. Depending on where you live, having tires that poke out beyond the fender or super slammed ride heights could be illegal. They also just invite additional eyes on your car, which means they're going to nail you for window tint or exhaust or something like that. Some states do have guidelines about tire coverage or ground clearance. Rolling around with crazy camber will attract the attention of law enforcement, leading to fix-it tickets or failed inspections. If daily usability is a crucial factor in the usability of your car, avoid legal hassles and probably don't dump it on its nuts. Stance is not cheap in the long run. Quality coilovers or air suspension does get expensive. And then there is the potential for those things wearing. You also have to buy baller wheels. It's kind of the point of it. And guess what? You're a wheel company if you're looking for them. Obviously, the more you get down that road, you are doing additional arms, you're doing additional mods, and stance is just, it's fairly expensive. It used to be this like really cheap thing you could do to your car. It's a money pit now. To dial in a cool stance setup, you're spending some money, dude. Probably about 10 grand to build a stance car these days. Again, you can stack washers on like max speeding rods and you can buy like cheap wheels off OfferUp, but no one cares about that. So if you're doing like a cool setup, you're probably spending about 10 grand on it. And if you're going for the stance look, you're gonna face a big choice: bags or static air coilovers. We're gonna talk about static first. It's simpler mechanically, it's often cheaper than a quality air setup. Ride height is consistent. You can set it up for track or spirited driving once you get done with the stance life. You can pick spring rates that don't destroy your fenders. Cons wise, limited ability to adjust on the fly. If you're super slammed, you're stuck at that height for daily driving. You're gonna scrape, you've got day-to-day hassles, you can't take certain roads. Air suspension, push that button, car goes up. It's that simple. Some modern air kits offer, I disagree, I'm being honest with you guys, decent handling. I think they handle like garbage, but whatever. They cost more money. They have potential for leaks or component failures, but you slam your car, raise your car up, more usable. Some people think it's less authentic than a static drop. It's your call. What route you choose depends on your tolerance for daily inconvenience and, of course, your budget. Air suspension lets you have that slammed look it needs, but you can still literally daily drive your car and navigate real-world roads. A lot of stance purists, though, They have a daily and they have a static setup for the commitment factor. They might also love hearing that scrape sound to remind them that they're living the low life. Generally, if it's your daily static, it doesn't make as much sense. I'd probably bag a daily driver. I'd probably slam a weekend show car on coils. It's about usability. If you're driving around static -12 and you have to go to work, right? So stance-wise, it doesn't always mean insane negative camber or scraping, and I kind of alluded to this in the intro. There's such things like a functional stance. The car is lowered enough for aesthetic appeal, but retains decent suspension travel and alignment. Think of it as a tasteful drop that respects daily driving and cornering dynamics. You are not going to be plowing into every driveway at a 45-degree angle or chewing up your tires in 2 months. There's a lot of words for this, but you can kind of think of it as slight negative camber, 2, 3, 4 degrees, for a sporty look that can still grip. Proper wheel sizing. You're not stretching tires within an inch of their life. You might have a tapered sidewall, you might have a square sidewall. You have a ride height that clears common road obstacles like speed bumps and all that, and you still have a low front lip. This is popular among people who want to show worthy vibe, but still want to hit the canyons and all that stuff. So you're thinking like WRX 255/35 on an 18x9.5 plus 28 or something instead of 38. It's a little more flush, it's a little more aggressive. Lower your car so that the fender is sitting kind of just over the tire. Dial in the spring rate so you're not, rubbing, scrubbing under load, under cornering, etc., etc. And that's kind of like a track stance or whatever you want to call it. It's a great option if you want like the low look, but you want a practical car. And this is really the sweet spot. It's honestly what you should just aspire for. You can still show up to like stance events. You can roll up to regular meets. You can hit the track. You can hit the canyons. Personally, it's what you should do with a car. If you want a stance car, do a stance car. But I think like, again, track stance, right? It's kind of what you want. So before you commit to an overall stance setup, consider your daily routine. Do you commute on decent roads, or are you navigating potholed city streets? Do you haul groceries, your kids, God forbid you put your kids in a stance car, or gear regularly? A super low stance might complicate these tasks. Also, winter. If you live in a place with a rough winter, a slammed ride can turn your daily drive into a nerve-wracking experience of snow plowing, snow and ice. Another factor, your tolerance for risk and frustration and annoyance. If you're okay with scraping your exhaust, potentially cracking an oil pan, or bending expensive wheels, if you misjudge a pothole, that's the cost of looking cool. Some folks are like, yo, stance is cool, I'm good with this. It's like any other hobby, it's worth the occasional headache. Others don't want to deal with it in their automotive life. It's up to you. Personally, I can't do it. I can't crack oil pans and be late somewhere. It's not my jam. Consider your intentions with the car. If you ever want to do spirited driving or track days, can't do it with stance setup. Sorry. If you're about cruising and showing off at meets, taking some pics with the boys, posting them up on the gram, that's less of a concern for you. You want to think about the longevity of your car, maintenance, and the depth of your wallet. The last thing you want to do is build a car and then regret it after a few months. It just costs money and goes nowhere. So let's talk about stance done right and stance done wrong. Done right. It's a show car. It's impeccably set up. The fenders are rolled. They might be slightly pulled, but your paint's not cracking. There's no really weird rubbing going on when you're driving. You've got nice suspension components, you've got arms, etc., etc. The wheels have the right offset. The tire stretch is as reasonably safe as you can, but stylish. You're running a good tire. The alignment is set up. The car is usually on air, so you can have perfect fitment at meets, but you can raise it up to drive it. A lot of these cars are so carefully executed that they blur the line between a stance car and art. You can see a lot of these at like the really, really higher end shows like Weekfest, stuff like that. Done wrong, you get a daily driver, you got eBay coilovers with washers on them, you got a ton of negative camber, you have dangerous wild stretch on 4 mismatched tires, you have broken parts everywhere, your fenders are burnt from your wheels that poke too far, your suspension has no travel, your ride is bouncy, you cannot corner. These cars often look like, can't say the word on YouTube. If you got half the bumper missing from an unfortunate run-in with a curb, if you have a cracked wheel that you have to fill up with air every day, why are you doing this? The difference lies in budget, research, and patience. People who stance their cars the right way spend big money on air or top-tier coilovers. They pick the right wheels, which means they get a hold of us, and they dial in their alignment. Meanwhile, people that just want to stance their car real quick and they just buy the cheapest wheels they can without doing any research off like OfferUp, they buy some max speeding rods. I'm really ripping on them. They're not that bad. They buy some cheap coilovers. they slam it, they don't align it, they just put the wheels on. Guys, your car doesn't look good. Honestly, it just doesn't look good. If you're gonna do stance, do it right. Now, stance is obviously a lightning rod for controversy in the automotive scene. Some people see stance cars as worthless trailer queens that can't handle turning on an on-ramp without scraping. Others argue it's a legitimate form of self-expression, automotive art meant for meets and social media. It's also worth noting that some stance builds are super well crafted with thousands poured into high-end parts, craftsmanship, and show-level detailing. I think where you can kind of look at things is you go back to like the lowrider scene, right? If your stance car looks kind of like a lowrider and you've got like sick wheels, you've got like chrome suspension, you've got like a high-end, you know, obviously air or coilover setup, whatever it might be, you've got a really fire paint job, interior's well done. It's a cool stance car. That's what it, you know, is. So you can kind of draw comparisons. Again, like lifted truck stance, lowriders, show car, you know, kind of anything in that realm. It's all very... Ultimately, though, it's your car. You get to decide if the negative camber is worth the negativity from the peanut gallery. If you're comfortable with your aesthetic choices and you can handle the occasional sideways glance or criticism on the internet, go for it. It's kind of part of the stance car experience. So let's wrap it all up. Give you a final verdict. Is it worth stancing your car? Well, it boils down to your priorities and your personal taste. You thought you were getting an answer. If you value style above all else, if you live for perfect wheel fitment and the slammed silhouette of your car, stance might be your dream come true. You'll get the admiration of the stance community. You'll get a unique aesthetic that is instantly recognizable. You'll get the joy of seeing your car reflect your individuality and personal style. However, it is not free of trade-offs. Your car is not a car anymore. You are sacrificing everyday practicality. You have to fork over more cash for repairs, replacements, high-quality suspension parts, wheelbarrows if you bend them, and guess what? If you push extremes, it's going to cost you extreme money. Tire wear, alignment headaches, safety concerns. Plus, you have to swallow the reality that some corners of the car world are going to hate on what your build is for being impractical. So is it worth it? Well, for the enthusiast who loves the form over function approach and is willing to deal with the cons, yeah, it's gonna be an amazing way to personalize your car. For someone who daily drives in harsh environments, buy a pickup truck. Wants to attend track days or just hates bottoming out on every driveway, again, buy a pickup truck. Maybe not so much. There's also no rule that says you have to go all in. You could choose a mild drop, a little bit of camber, and a slightly stretched tire for that clean street car stance without going full show car. That middle ground might be the sweet spot for you. It's going to allow you to enjoy a low look, kind of sample the stance life. Your car's going to look pretty cool, and you can retain some real world usability. It's not as cool as a full-blown stance car, stop pretending it is, but there you go. Ultimately though, it's your call. It's your money, your car, your sense of style. If the stance life appeals to you enough to outweigh the headaches, go for it, dive right in, do your research, check out our website, invest in quality parts from our website, and make sure you are aware of the maintenance and safety aspects. If you can make peace with that, stance is fun. I've had a bunch of stance cars. It's really cool. Your car looks sick. You run up numbers on the gram. Downside wise though, obviously, you know, again, it's not a car. So if you guys liked the video, it's a little disjointed. I went pretty off script. I don't know if you guys could tell. There you go. Thank you so much for watching the video. Drop a like, drop a comment. If there's something else we should cover, drop that in a comment down below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, pick up some wheels. We have them here, here, over here, back there. And guess what? There's like another building over there. It's full of them. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.